Welcome to Skytech-Lens. In 2025, the American auto industry was rocked to its core as four of the world's most prominent automakers, Toyota, Nissan, Hyundai, and Mazda, abruptly announced their complete withdrawal from the US market. The news sent shockwaves through the nation, catching nearly everyone off guard, from loyal customers to industry insiders who had long considered these brands a permanent fixture on American roads. Their departure wasn't a slow fade into obscurity, it was a dramatic, coordinated exodus that unfolded almost overnight. Consumers who had grown up with these brands were left in disbelief, while politicians scrambled to respond to the economic and social fallout. The sense of loss was immediate and palpable, as if a familiar part of daily life had suddenly vanished. The catalyst for this unprecedented move was a sweeping 25% tariff imposed on all foreign-built vehicles and auto parts. The policy, intended to boost domestic manufacturing and protect American jobs, instead sent shockwaves through global supply chains. Shipments stalled at ports, parts were stranded at borders, and the cost of doing business in America skyrocketed for these international giants. As costs soared and profits evaporated, the business model that had sustained these companies for decades in the US collapsed almost overnight. Factories that once buzzed with activity fell silent, and the financial losses mounted with alarming speed. For decades, these automakers had been woven into the very fabric of American life. They invested billions in local economies, created hundreds of thousands of jobs, and became trusted names in households across the country. Their presence was felt, not just in showrooms, but in community events, sponsorships, and the livelihoods of countless families. Their sudden exit left dealership lots barren, workers facing unemployment, and entire communities grappling with an uncertain future. The ripple effects extended far beyond the auto industry, touching local businesses, schools, and public services that depended on the economic activity these companies generated. The competitive balance that had defined the US auto market for half a century was shattered in an instant. Once thriving factories became relics, and the market landscape was forever altered. What followed was a new era, marked by empty factories, higher car prices, and a profound sense of loss that lingered in communities across the nation. Families struggled to find affordable vehicles, and towns that once thrived on auto industry jobs faced an uncertain road ahead. The consequences of aggressive trade policy had rewritten the story of American industry, leaving a legacy of disruption and a nation searching for answers in the wake of a vanished automotive era. The fallout was immediate and devastating, sending shockwaves through entire communities that had depended on these jobs for generations. In a single crushing moment, 38,000 American workers lost their livelihoods. For many, these weren't just jobs, they were a source of identity, pride, and stability. These numbers represented real people, families suddenly facing an uncertain future, children watching their parents struggle, and entire neighborhoods thrown into turmoil. The closures sent ripples far beyond the factory gates. Local diners, hardware stores, and corner shops, businesses that had thrived on the steady hum of industry, were forced to shutter their doors. Playgrounds grew quiet as families packed up and left, searching for hope elsewhere. Local governments, once buoyed by tax revenue from these plants, suddenly faced budget shortfalls. Public services were slashed and city officials scrambled to keep basic programs afloat. The promise of Buy American now rang hollow in towns where the factories stood silent, and the sense of betrayal was palpable. Residents who had believed in the dream felt abandoned. Many workers with specialized skills honed over decades found themselves adrift in a new economy. Forced to take on gig jobs or low-wage work, they struggled to find stability or dignity in unfamiliar roles. The psychological toll was immense. Pride and purpose were replaced by anxiety, stress, and a deep sense of loss. Families faced mounting bills and difficult choices, straining relationships and testing resilience. These job losses weren't just collateral damage, they were the direct result of a policy that prioritized political rhetoric over the real lives of working Americans. The anger and frustration spilled into the streets. The abandoned factories now stand as stark, haunting reminders of broken promises and lost potential, their empty shells echoing with memories of better days. The human cost of this exodus will echo for years to come, as schools shrink, neighborhoods empty, and the fabric of these communities unravels. For many, the American dream was replaced by a harsh new reality, one defined by uncertainty, loss, and the struggle to rebuild from the ashes. The automaker's exit sent car prices soaring. New vehicles jumped $5,000 to $10,000 overnight. Affordable models vanished, And with less competition, even domestic brands raised prices. New cars became a luxury, out of reach for millions of families. Lenders tightened credit, making it even harder for average Americans to buy. The used car market exploded. Old vehicles sold for unprecedented prices, turning basic transportation into a bidding war. Families desperate for reliable cars faced inflated costs and dwindling options. The freedom once symbolized by car ownership was suddenly restricted. Dealerships, once bustling, became graveyards of unaffordable vehicles. The social contract around mobility in America was upended. For many, the road to opportunity was now blocked by sticker shock. While U.S. factories shuttered, Canada seized the moment. The same automakers fleeing America found a welcoming partner north of the border. Canada offered stability, incentives, and a clear policy framework, everything the U.S. lacked. Investment and jobs flowed into Ontario and Quebec, fueling a manufacturing boom. New plants rose, old ones expanded, and Canadian cities thrived. The center of North American auto production shifted north, leaving Detroit and other U.S. cities behind. Canada's pragmatic approach contrasted sharply with America's isolationism. For global automakers, the choice was simple: invest where you're wanted. America's loss became Canada's gain. Toyota, once a pillar of the U.S. auto industry, was crippled by the new tariffs. Its just-in-time supply chain, a model of efficiency, was thrown into chaos. Production costs soared, and Toyota was forced to pass those costs to consumers, shattering its reputation for value. Plans for electric vehicle innovation in the U.S. were scrapped, with investments redirected to friendlier markets. As prices rose, loyal customers turned away, and Toyota's market share evaporated. The company faced billions in losses and no path to profitability. Decades of investment and goodwill were undone in a matter of months. Toyota's retreat became a symbol of how quickly policy can dismantle even the strongest institutions. The U.S. lost not just a brand but a driver of innovation and jobs. The lesson: protectionism can destroy what it aims to protect. Nissan and Mazda, two giants of the Japanese automotive world, suddenly found themselves in deep crisis as new tariffs made their U.S. business models unsustainable almost overnight. For decades, both companies had invested heavily in North America, building factories, creating jobs, and weaving themselves into the fabric of local economies. But the new trade barriers changed everything, forcing them to rethink their entire approach. Nissan, already struggling with internal challenges and fierce competition, posted record losses. The company was forced to abandon its ambitious cross-border production strategy, which had once been hailed as a model of global efficiency. Popular models that once rolled off the lines in Mexico and the U.S. disappeared from showrooms. Plants that had been bustling with activity now faced closure, leaving entire communities in limbo. Mazda, smaller and more vulnerable than its rivals, was hit even harder. Exports to the U.S. plummeted by over half in just a matter of months, leaving thousands of unsold cars stranded at ports and factories. Its operations in Canada, which were closely tied to the U.S. market, were suspended indefinitely. Workers who had counted on steady paychecks suddenly found themselves without jobs or answers. Meanwhile, Chinese automakers seized the moment, flooding global markets with affordable electric vehicles. Their rapid expansion squeezed Mazda and Nissan even further, making recovery seem impossible. Trapped between U.S. protectionism and fierce global competition, both companies were left with no choice but to retreat from markets they had once dominated. Executives scrambled for solutions, but the damage was already done. Decades of investment and thousands of jobs vanished almost overnight, leaving families and entire towns facing an uncertain future. The American dream for these companies, once so full of promise, ended in a financial nightmare. The contrast between past optimism and present reality was stark. The closures left a trail of shuttered factories, broken economic ties, and communities struggling to find a new path forward. The ripple effects extended far beyond the auto industry, touching every corner of the towns and cities that had once thrived on the promise of steady work and shared prosperity. Hyundai's story was a perfect storm. Tariffs and immigration crackdowns collided, creating chaos. The company's new EV plant in Georgia was raided, and nearly 500 Korean engineers were detained. The project froze, and 8,500 promised American jobs evaporated. The message to international investors was clear: your business and your people aren't welcome. The incident sparked a diplomatic crisis with South Korea, a key U.S. ally. Hyundai's leadership saw no choice but to withdraw, citing both financial and security concerns. The half-built factory became a monument to failed policy. The diplomatic fallout strained alliances and sent shockwaves through global boardrooms. Hyundai's exit was a warning. The risks of investing in America had become too great. The damage, economic and diplomatic, would take years to repair. The empty factories and lost jobs are more than the result of a failed auto policy. They signal a deeper crisis. America's role as a global economic leader is in question. Aggressive tariffs backfired, triggering job losses and higher prices instead of a manufacturing revival. While the US built barriers, countries like Canada built bridges, attracting the very investment America lost. The world isn't waiting for America to resolve its internal debates. The automotive exodus is about more than cars. It's about a nation at a crossroads. Will America choose isolation, or rebuild the partnerships that once made it strong? The answer will shape the future for millions. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel now for more updates.